And thorough with this conversation, but toxic parenting. Who is a toxic parent?
Well, to start with, a toxic parent is a parent that have attitude and behaviors that poison their children.
So I'm going to be reacting to this video. It's a TVC video. There's an interview of this gentleman. I think he was described as a motivational speaker. So what you just heard him say now is like what I consider the highlight of his contribution during that program. And I'm going to let you listen to the rest of it to a point, and then I'm going to react to the whole thing, because much as he added major value, of course he offered useful information. I felt it wasn't just that I felt, I did some research and I saw that there were other aspects to toxicity in parenting that he missed out, which I feel are valuable and need to be brought out to the attention of parents, you know, and even children who are being parented, so they know what their parents may be doing to them and know how they can protect themselves. So listen to the full more longer excerpt from the video, and then you listen to my reaction at the end of it.
Welcome. Now, we are going to be talking parenting right now, and we have been joined by Femi Shofoluwe, a thoroughbred, passionate youth teacher with more than a decade hands-on experience. He has a burning desire to see the average youth become an exceptional young adult. Now, on parenting today, he will be discussing with us the signs of toxic parenting. Now, I had not heard about that topic until yesterday when I heard that I would be talking about this with you. By the way, welcome, Femi. Good to have you here.
Thank you for having me this morning.
Yes, indeed. I know you are a candid speaker at events and all of that, so I know you'll be very passionate and thorough with this conversation. But toxic parenting, who is a toxic parent?
Well, to start with, a toxic parent is a parent that have attitude and behaviors that poison their children. They are parents that in fact, there are several signals that you get to look out for when you talk about toxic parenting. Number one of which, I believe, is your children. How comfortable are they around you? If your children are not comfortable around you, believe me, that is a very, very strong signal that you probably may be a toxic parent. When your children close from school, for example, do they want to come home? Are they happy coming home? During holiday, do they want to stay with you, or they seek somewhere else to go? Do they have excuses trying to let you know what, we can't stay here, we just want to go and see grandma, blah, blah, blah.
I'm laughing because you're describing almost every African parent there.
I tell you the truth, almost every African parent are toxic parents, almost all of them.
So this is the cultural thing then?
It's a cultural thing, and you see, and the problem is this: when you tell somebody that they are displaying signals of a toxic parent, the truth is they will argue it out with you. That is not true. And that is where the problem is. When you have a problem and you don't know you have a problem, that in itself is the number one problem that needs to be dealt with. And we now talk about ignorance. So you need to seek knowledge first as a parent to know who you are, where you stand on this kind of topic, on this kind of issue. You need to find out, are you a toxic parent to start with, before we now talk about how do you rectify the damage that has been done. And the truth is this: most parents are toxic parents not because they choose to be. It is the way we are raised.
So it's a chain reaction.
It's a chain reaction.
Already been entrenched.
It's something that has been ongoing for decades, for centuries, in fact, forever.
So how do we break it then, especially as modern parents?
For us to break a toxic...
The reason why I've decided to do a reaction to this video is because I listened to the contributions by this gentleman, and all due respect to him, Mr. Femi Shofoluwe, I feel that he took a very narrow perspective on what he described as it's one-dimensional as or toxic parenting. All right, and it's understandable because probably it's from what he's shared, his own personal experience growing up. He suffered that, and I think many of us were exposed to some form of toxicity in the parenting we got. I certainly can admit to that. However, there's actually a much more comprehensive understanding of toxic parenting that we need to have if we really want to address it. And believe me, the reason why I say that is that it's actually not applicable to all parents or a large number of parents in Africa. No. There are a lot of parents in Africa who are not toxic. I think the definition and perspective adopted by Mr. Femi has just to do with more of the rather domineering nature of African parents. Yes, that's a dimension of toxicity, but the aspects that need to be captured that really show, because if it was that bad, if it was that bad, the toxicity, then we would be a continent of loose cannons and damaged individuals emotionally and psychologically moving around. It would be literally impossible to have a healthy interaction with anybody in the African society. We would have all kinds. In fact, we would have a need for massive psychotherapy, being done for people. So, but we don't have that. We are people who grew up healthy, come out, and to a large extent, people are not damaged beyond repair, and if at all, damaged at all. So I think Femi's perspective of it, and we all have our opinions, but I have chosen to go with what the professionals have done to define and describe what the signs of toxicity in a parent are. I've chosen to do that because I think it enables us to achieve a more balanced understanding of what toxic parenting is about. So I'm going to be showing that in the next slides. It's going to be, I think I'm going to be using a page from, I found it to be a very well treated subject in this write-up by WebMD. Okay, so how to deal with toxic parents. You see the signs of toxic parents described there, and those ones were more, in my own opinion, they provided a more balanced perspective of what toxic parenting is about. So let's move on to that now. The link will be provided in the description for this video. You can check out the full article. I'm not going to be reading it out. I just want to read out what they call the common toxic traits. All right, signs you might have a toxic parent include: 1, they are self-centered. That is, they don't think about your needs or feelings. I'm going to talk about that immediately, and I have 2 examples. In fact, in doing this reaction video, I'm going to be using 2 individuals that I know in real life. One is about 46, in the late 40s now. The other is in the late 80s. One is male, the other is female. But I'm going to tell you, I know both of them very, very well, and both of them have children, and I'm going to describe. So that's why I was saying that what Femi did in his video, what he said, well, to some extent I agree, but to a lot of it I think he's generalizing too much. He's using a very generic approach. Now, you see, this self-centeredness that's talked about here, in fact, if you look at the case, so let me go ahead. The female person I talked about, that I said is in the 40s, this individual is somebody that even around her kids only ever shows interest where it has to do with her. In fact, she will even steer conversations being had with the kids. If her spouse at the point in time was having a discussion with the kids and she was present, she would not participate in that discussion, and if she were going to participate, she will eventually divert the discussion to herself. It's always like that. If they were talking about the achievement of one of the children, for instance, and the children were sharing that with the spouse, this woman would either come in with a sarcastic statement or send their child on an errand. She would disrupt that discussion and eventually find a way to either break up the discussion so that discussion ends, okay, and the partner is excluded, that the husband is excluded, or she would find a way to bring it in and then twist it and say, oh, when I was in school I also did that. That's one. So self-centered, always about them. If something's not going right for them, literally they will not listen to any other person's concerns or complaints or challenges. They don't want to know. So it's kind of a tendency towards being narcissistic. All right, they are emotional loose cannons. This is pretty characteristic. The other one that I said is the male one that I said is in his 80s. Also had the same tendency of diverting attention to himself as this other one. Then he was also, just like her, he's also a loose cannon. There have been instances where he would go completely wild and go on a tirade, just attack somebody, not physically, but verbally attack somebody who was trying to do something for his own spouse. So in this case, this is a male person, okay, much advanced in age, but all the years they've been together, he and his partner, he would always get very aggressive, very upset, okay, and actually be verbally violent against people he felt were coming between him, for instance, and his partner, and whatever he's trying to do to his partner. And whenever they didn't do what he wanted, it took a very little transgression, in quote, to upset him, and you will begin to say, okay, so what did I do, and why did it require so much aggression, verbal aggression from you? He was never physical. All right, so that's another example. So because of that, the kids kind of try to avoid staying around him a lot. Not just the kids, I think generally people, not even generally, quite often the kids, cousins, his nephews and things like that, they will not come around anymore. Then you will see him begin to call them up and saying, you seem not to be visiting. I have not seen you, not come to visit me in a while. And the other person at the other end, you hear the person in a very uncomfortable voice, kind of trying to, you could literally hear that one squirm as he tried to find a kind of acceptable excuse as to explain why he had not come. But more often than not, it's just because the drama was just too much. Maybe also the fact that he was always argumentative, always wanted to be the one to have the last say, always wanted to voice opinion where he was always right and every other person was wrong. So having a conversation with him was so difficult. Because of that, the kids avoided spending time. They greet and say a few things, but they never wanted to have prolonged contact. Okay, so in a way, what Femi said there, you can see it. The other thing is, you see the third item there, they overshare. Well, again, that one you can read up on that one in proper details about their lives. Well, these two people never really did much of that. They seek control. They're very controlling. Okay, so I'm going to give another example. A situation in which somebody is always trying to be there to tell you how to do everything to the letter, no matter how familiar you are with the chore or the task. He wants to be there. He wants to tell you what to do. Do it here, sit down here, go here, never giving you the freedom to use your own discretion, to use your own initiative to get a task done. So if they're not there, they're not happy and they're not convinced that it's been done right. And even when it's done right, they find it very hard to acknowledge you. Both of these individuals I'm talking about are just like that. In fact, getting them to say well done is a big challenge. It's almost impossible to do. And if you get it, it's always a rarity, and they always find a way to follow up with something else that puts you back in your place. So these are people that don't make you feel comfortable at all with being around them. All right, they are harshly critical. Okay, you see what they said about using control there. They use guilt and money to get you to do what they want. The one who's the woman that I was talking about with the kids, what she does a lot is emotional blackmail. And we hear of this all the time, where a mother might try to say, oh, look how I've suffered so much for you, now you don't want to do this small thing for me. Do you know what I've sacrificed for you? You know all the pains I've gone through since I had you, taking care of you. So that forces the child to want to put his or her own needs in the background and put her needs ahead of his all the time, or ahead of hers all the time. So the child is always trying to play kind of live a second-class life to please the mom. All right, so even down to sacrificing herself. Some of the children will do that for her. They will literally take the blame for something they didn't do, which they know the mother did, because they don't want the father to find out she did it and blame her. So she makes them feel a need to cover for her, even if it damages them in the process. So that's another aspect of control. They're harshly critical. This one, what they said here is, nothing you do is ever good enough. They don't respect any good traits or achievements. This happened with both of these individuals I'm talking about with their kids. If the child did well in something, it was very, very, very hard and rare to find them being the ones to, on their own, voluntarily go and tell the world about it. You know, the way, if your child does well, let's assume your child wins a prize in something, and then visitors come, or you go and visit people, even with the child or without the child, or your friends in the office. These are people that generally don't take such information about the child's achievements and go and broadcast it to the world in pride. More often than not, you have to tear it out of them, or it is the spouse, either the wife of the one that said is a man, or the husband of the other one, that tends to do the noise making and say, oh, our child did this, but they will not be the ones to do it. And you very often, when the child comes and shows them the evidence of achievement, maybe the prize or the medal or trophy or whatever, their response is often cold and indifferent. Oh, that's nice, well done, keep it up, but no excitement. So it's not like the child gets excited to go and show them. So quite often the child turns to the other parent that shows more interest, and is that from there the child gets the emotional fulfillment, the reward that the child seeks in terms of kind of being acknowledged for having done right. So the children know that this other parent, you go to him, you go to her, you're not going to get anything. Those are toxic traits, because it makes the child feel uncomfortable, makes the child not to feel fulfilled, makes the child not to feel like coming to connect with you and get what they can get, what they should be able to get from you as a parent. And they lack boundaries. This one is so significant, especially with the woman I talked about. In her own case, because she started having problems with her spouse, she would always use the children, to monitor how do I put it now? She would constantly monitor the children in order to know what the spouse was up to. They couldn't even make phone calls to their father or speak on phone with their father. She would be there eavesdropping on the phone calls. If they were going to spend time with him in his room, she would be there staying near the door, eavesdropping at the door. She always wanted to know what they were saying to him, what he was saying to them, where they were going, what they were doing. If they came back, she wanted to interrogate them, and she made the children feel guilty. They did not tell her exactly what they had said to him and what he had said to them, even though she would then instruct them not to tell him what she had told them and what. So it was always like that. That's why I said this kind of aspects of being narcissistic are incorporated in here. And the narcissist is a very toxic individual. But that's another level of toxicity, but it's the kind of worst case scenario. But those are the traits. And so these kinds of signs in any parent are signs of toxicity. And any child that is forced to relate with this kind of parent is really going to struggle developing social skills that are balanced. All right.
Now, another thing she used to do, this lady, was that to show that she did not have boundaries, she would eavesdrop. She would also take their phones and check through messages they shared, especially with their father. So because she was not on good terms with the father, because she was also trying to alienate the kids from the father, she was very insecure about her status and standing with the kids. So she felt a need to damage whatever bond was built by the father with the kids. So she was constantly working on that. So there was like peaks and troughs in the relationship with the father with the kids, because each time they repair their relationship, she would find a way to also trigger some disagreement, or when a parent is acting in ways that are designed to influence a child to do what is not in his or her best interest in regard to the relationship he or she has with the other parent. So that's parental alienation. So she would do that. She would check through their messages, read through their WhatsApp messages with their father and things like that. These are things she would not want to be done to her, but she was doing it, and the kids would know, and the kids knew she didn't want them to tell their father. So you can see the kind of psychological pressure the kids are under. Even things they can tell their father, they're supposed to tell their father, they first of all want to check if she'll be upset, they are concerned. It takes a lot of prodding to get them to say it. Even things they're supposed to tell the teachers in school, they're scared to say it because they don't know how their mother will react. So it's an aspect of life that can be very traumatizing for children. There's also other things you can look for, like in this case of this woman, for instance, whenever she was around, because she's broken up with the spouse now, whenever she was around, the kids will be very unwilling to show affection to their father whenever she was around, because their father was somebody that since they knew he was not on good terms, they were not on good terms, he and their mother. They knew that because she was always very loud and aggressive, about the relationship between herself and him. They knew the way she felt about him, and they knew she did not like him being with them. She showed it. So if she was around, the kids were extra careful not to come near him or too close to him, or to show affection to me, or stay too long with him. They knew that. They would always want to stay away. But the minute she was not around, these same kids will be all over the man. So those are examples of toxicity. Now, whether or not the outside world, the people who are not within that family, are able to see it is a different issue. Relatives might visit and notice it and say nothing. Friends might visit and notice it and say nothing. They might be out visiting people and people might notice it and they will say nothing. Some people are not even trained to observe it and notice that something significant. But some people, since we have a high percentage of people in society who are actually a bit toxic themselves, sometimes abusive people cannot just see anything wrong with abuse, so they don't see anything wrong with it. But what is important here is that if you notice that pattern of behavior, that trend, okay, in behavior, then it can give you an idea of what may be happening with kids that are being parented by a certain individual or individuals, and maybe you can then intervene if you have the appropriate training and understanding of what to do. But what is most critical here is that at least be able to detect it. At least that will throw some light, and you can then maybe gently inquire from that child, have conversation with that child, and it can give you an idea. Like Femi was sharing in his own contribution on the TV show on TVC. He was saying about how a girl was telling him what his mother was doing. The girl that was in the shop where the mother was selling, and men were trying to make advances towards her, and she would tell them off, and then the mother would begin to say, you want to spoil my business. So the mother was thinking more of her own needs as a business person running a beer parlor than the needs of her daughter to preserve her dignity as a woman. So she did not understand that she was exposing her child to possible dangers, or maybe she didn't care. So those are signs of toxicity in parenting. But the thing is, we've got to see the bigger picture. Like these signs I've put together, I've kind of touched on in this write-up. I think they help to achieve a more balanced perspective when we're trying to look for signs of toxicity, as against the one where I was just talking about what the tendency of African parents is to shout down a child. Yeah, that's true, that happens, and all of that. But those are not the only things to look for. There are more subtle dimensions to these to toxicity that people need to know, and hopefully that what I've done in this video helps people to adopt this broader perspective. It's important, and I think it's a very neglected area of abuse. This is a form of abuse. Toxic parenting is abusive parenting. We need to begin to become sensitive to any type of abuse. Right now, we are very concerned as a society about physical abuse for the most part, and many times we do not realize that the non-physical can be actually more damaging than physical. In fact, the non-physical is one that produces the people who are physically abusive and cause problems in our society. Now, when we want to talk about maybe how do we stop toxic parenting, how do we cure toxic parenting, the thing is, it depends on what personality type, in my opinion, based on all the extensive reading I've done of the work done by professional research and all that, psychologytoday.com. I've been to so many places, studied these things, and I'm telling you, it depends first of all on the kind of individual, the personality type that individual who is toxic, that parent has. Because if a person is narcissistic, a real narcissist, a true narcissist that ticks the box in textbook manner, oh my God, I'm not very convinced that person can change. That's the thing. So there are different kinds of abusive people, but a narcissistically abusive person, that one is top end, and that kind of person, there's no cure. It's for the child. Like if you read the article on webmd.com that I showcased, that I featured those signs of toxicity on, the person there said she stayed away from her mother for 10 years to set boundaries. The mother was, so there were so many problems. So some parents, you will have to actually give them space if they're abusing like that, if they're narcissistically abusive, because narcissistic abusers do not change. It's a form of it's a kind of personality type that the person is damaged beyond repair. That's literally what it is. Everything I've read, all the experts have said, it's very, very difficult to find a narcissist that can change. So it means the best control for that is zero contact. So this lady in the webmd.com, she said that. She said, look, I simply just completely cut off. Though eventually they reestablished contact, and then, but they stayed, because she's had to maintain that boundary still. So brief contact, they talk a while, but she knew she must not allow the mother to resume the kind of relationship they had before. So there are some kind of people like that. So it depends. If that person is not narcissistically abusive, doesn't have the traits of a narcissist, then of course, with feedback over time, that person can adjust their behavior. And what do you need? Simply become a person that is empathetic. Once you are empathetic, most of these things are self-correcting. An empathetic person is a person that has the ability to be emotionally intelligent. You are willing to put into consideration the feelings of other people with regard to what you are doing to them. How do you make people feel? That's ultimately what it boils down to. All this issue of toxicity, at the end of the day, it's about interpersonal effectiveness. If you are somebody that makes people uncomfortable to be around you, you are a toxic person. Solution: become a more empathetic person. Period. And it's not difficult. Just do unto others as you had them do unto you. be considerate. So hopefully we can begin to work on this. I intend to do more videos like this, talking about stuff like this, and I do hope you find it useful. Let me know if you have any questions. You can reach me using the contact details on your screen or post in the comments. I wish you well.